What's going on? How you been? I haven't seen you in a long time or talked to you in a long time.
That is true. So how's Hawaii?
Hawaii's beautiful as it is always. I'm sitting here looking at the island of Lanai and Molokai, and it's a beautiful day. Sad day yesterday. It'll be a sad day today with Pat not here, but I guess life goes on, unfortunately, without Pat.
Bob, tell the folks about, well, from you remembering Pat first as a person and then as a broadcaster, but tell them a little bit of you spent so much time with him and with Madden and Summerall, but tell them a little bit about from your recollections about Pat.
Well, it's interesting you put him in that order because people should know that order. Pat was a much better man. You knew Pat in the days for sure. He was a much, much better man than people know. He was a caring person. And Pat, he ran with presidents. He ran with big corporate executives, but he also was very considerate and kind to all the people way beneath him. He was a good man. When he gave up drinking, he lived a pretty hard life. And when I say hard life, I mean he was in the streets like a lot of us probably were in certain parts of our life. But then he got sober and he became a Christian, and it was a great change. He was never happier than he has been for the last, since he met Sherry, his wife. He was a good man, and everybody, remembers him as a broadcaster. He was the voice of CBS with the Masters and the U.S. Open tennis, and obviously the NFL. So everybody knew Pat's voice. Unfortunately, not enough people knew him as a person because he was special. He really was special. I mean, everybody says that about people when they pass, but Pat was a good, kind human being. He was a good man.
How about you working and preparing every week for the telecast? How about working with Pat week to week?
Well, Pat was unique and John were unique. They came together, and arguably the best set of broadcasters to have certainly ever do NFL football, and nobody can take credit for that. Anybody that tried to would be lying. It was just a chemistry that happened, and it happened out of respect for each other, but it more importantly happened out of that they were both different. I mean, John was, and had the enthusiasm, and still does, of a child, curiosity. He loves and loved football, and he was all over the place. And Pat gave him the freedom to be that way, because Pat was such a minimalist with words. John knew, that he could go anywhere, and Pat would land us safely. And so it was a great combination. And they were different people. They didn't hang together, but when they got together on Sundays or when we were working, they had great respect for each other. And John, like I say, was all over the place, and Pat could paint beautiful pictures with very few words.
We're talking with Bob Stenner, the lead producer for the NFL telecasts. He and Sandy Grossman were very much part of the Summerall Madden team for many, many years. What was different about doing their game, Bob, when you're working with Summerall and Madden? What would be different? What would you guys do differently than you would do if you were working with another pair of announcers?
Well, you had a great comfort that they could handle any situation. People used to say that our group did a great job on one-sided blowout games, and I hope we did, but that was their. They were both football guys. They loved football. They would, when you do football games, there's always a story there. And some broadcast teams, and I say this generally, if the game goes south, sometimes the broadcast goes south. These guys would raise their level to a different place in blowout games. They could find anything that we could show them. They would make pictures out of it. It could be pigeons. It could be the sunset. It could be, and they could take any situation and make it interesting. And that's a great tribute to them. We used to even sometimes before the games, if we had time, just put random shots on the air, just to kind of play and have fun with it, and see what they'd say about it. And they had a very special gift. I was just watching the Masters this weekend, and people have asked me, do you remember certain things? And I don't, because I don't have that kind of mind. But one thing I remembered, Freddie Couples played well this past weekend in the Masters, and Pat was doing it one year, and Couples was walking from one hole to the other across a kind of a bridge, And Pat said, and you always saw it with couples, the way he plays, but Pat just said these like 5 words. He said, he even makes walking look easy. And it was like, wow. I mean, we all kind of think that, but whoever would ever say it that way? And then those words and what you're looking at, it was like magic. And Pat was capable. He just did those kind of things. I don't know how he did it. I really have no idea how he did it. That's what made him so special.